Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers, for the last of Mythical March. Did you see
Mythical
how I did
March.
that?
It's been a heck of a run.
It has. It has. It's been really, really exciting. And I can't believe we're already out of March of this year. Can you believe that, Mark?
It's our a third of the year is gone. So
It
it's
is. It is. I think the next event we have is
Encounter Quest.
Encounter Quest, and then we
Just a couple
also
weeks.
don't we have Paracon or something like that?
North Carolina Paracon is coming. We have to get the official date. I believe it's May the 4th. So May the 4th
Oh,
be with us that it continues on that date.
that's kind of exciting. I like that.
Yeah, that should be fun. So if all goes well, and then we go crazy. Literally, we have an event, at least 2 events a month from May to July, and
Oh, yeah, no, don't get us started in August.
August, September, October is just off the charts. So no,
Yeah.
just follow us at EerieTravels.com, and we'll try to keep up to date on all our appearances and such. We've even got some book signings coming up. I just found emails of yesterday, so it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going to be doing that while we're on our trip to that. So that'll be fun.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So I'm really excited because we did a field trip to do this episode.
Yes, we went to our local cinema, which is actually like a halfway point between the two of us.
Yes.
And so it worked out really good to go see the latest cinematic creation from the team that brought us Ghostbusters.
Yes. Yes. The first thing I need everybody to understand is, who are you going to call?
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
That was the catchphrase from the very first one all the way back in 1984. But was it really the first Ghostbusters?
Well, yeah. So let's go all the way back, shall we? To a time when people sued other people over music rights for the movie The Ghostbusters. Just kidding. That's probably not what we want to talk about at all. So no, so we went and saw Ghostbusters. Frozen Empire is the latest Ghostbusters. And we thought we'd talk about the fact that Ghostbusters actually has been huge. So the first movie came out in
1984, but there was a TV series in 1975 with the title The Ghostbusters, and it was made by the company called Filmation. It was a really, really, really terrible sitcom starring the guys from F Troop and a
oh my gosh,
and a guy in a monkey suit that were catching ghosts or chasing ghosts. And yeah, it's a sitcom comedy, and it was mostly forgotten by everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming it didn't last more than a year, correct?
Right. It was a one season, one shot wonder, and that was it. Years later, the 1984, we have our wonderful friend Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, who had they were coming off the success of Animal House. They'd done all these other movies. The Stripes was their big hit the year before, and they were writing a ghost movie and it was their tribute to Abbott and Costello chasing ghosts and stuff like that. And they wrote it for their friend John Belushi, who was going to be the lead character, but he passed away. So they, didn't know what to do. And they are like, well, we'll get our friend Bill Murray, who had just done Stripes with them, to do that part. And they rewrote a character for John Belushi to be appearing in the movie, and that is our wonderful character Slimer. They remade him completely based off John Belushi's Bluto from Animal House as a tribute to John. They got Ivan Reitman to direct, and as they filmed it, they weren't sure they were going to be able to get the word Ghostbusters because of that old Filmation TV series. So they were actually called Ghost Chasers.
Ghost Chasers.
Ghost Chasers, there you get where that comes from now. And so they filmed two versions of every scene where they called it Ghostbusters and then Ghost Chasers. And then after a little bit, they were like, we got to get the name Ghostbusters. So they went to Filmation and paid I think it was like $100,000, which is, extraordinary amount of money back in the day just to get the name so that they could do it. And
Well, it's
there we
interesting because
go.
that makes you wonder what the difference would have been, right?
Yeah.
If they had had the name. So
Yeah.
1984, this has this amazing comedy cast because a lot of these guys had done also like Saturday Night Live and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah, they were the same comedy team, but then they also had some regular dudes in it. That's why the great Ernie Hudson comes in as Winston Zedmore. And I guess when they originally wrote the script, it had a much larger part, and he was a little disappointed that they cut it so much when they rewrote the movie. But it's still, he's a great part because he's the everyman in it,
Yeah.
right? As long as there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say. One of the greatest lines of all time.
And then
But
Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, of course, another fellow SNL, SCTV alumni. My goodness, the great Annie Potts, and then Sigourney Weaver as
So
the
did you know
romantic
that
lead.
they almost did not cast Sigourney Weaver in that movie?
I did not know that. Who
Yeah.
did it
So
usually get?
well, it's not that, it's that they didn't know if she could be funny. Because remember, she is coming off of like Aliens and these
Yeah.
other movies like that, where she was more horror serious, and they didn't know if she could be funny in this movie. But they fought for her because I don't know how that movie would have been that movie without her in it. Because she was the perfect counterbalance, I think, to Bill Murray's character, right?
Yeah. Oh no, that was definitely great chemistry there.
Yeah.
Hard to beat. That was one of the things I noticed of going back and watching that again recently was I forgot how there are some actual dark, scary moments in that movie. There are some actual over the top sexual references in that movie, and there's a lot of stuff in that that I don't think would have flown in today's world.
Well, I think that, you look at it, and I have to go back to, because this comes up in this newer movie in a way, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler, but the very first scene that they do is they're at a library, right? They get
Right.
called to a library because there's a ghost.
Yeah.
And they go downstairs and they encounter the ghost in the library, right? And she has the famous scene of they're talking and they're trying to have this conversation, right? And this is before all of the stuff that they got for their quote unquote ghost busting. And she turns to them and goes, shh. And they don't be quiet.
Yeah.
And then she turns into the horrific apparition. I remember 1984 because I was around 11 years old when this movie came out, and I did go see it in the theater. That scared the living shit out of me when that ghost came at me, right? And
Yeah.
that's how they start the movie. That is right before they run the initial credits of the movie.
Hmm.
So I think that's interesting because you have that whole part. And then overall, I think, because this is a movie in 1984. So guess what? Spoiler alert. I think, first of all, it still holds up. There's very little that doesn't hold up because of the way they made that movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is kind of back to even Aliens and stuff, which we'll talk about in another episode, but they made it in a way that the majority of the effects were not CGI or done it with stuff that didn't hold up over time, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, there's some claymation and stuff that gets a little hazy right now with the hell dogs and stuff like that. But what I also loved about it, which is something that goes along with everything that we do, is they built lore around this creature. It wasn't just like we're fighting a ghost. They built lore around Gozer, the destroyer,
Right.
right? And that entire thing, which spawns one of my favorite lines from the original Ghostbusters movie, which was, if someone asks you if you're a god, Ray, say yes.
Nice.
That is probably my favorite line in that entire movie.
What I love about that original script is there are lines in it that aren't, if you just read the script, it's not funny. It's not
Yeah.
a comedy in places, but those are some of the lines that I think are some of the greatest lines in cinematic history. My favorite is, hey, where do these stairs go? And then Bill Murray does a double take and goes, they go up. And it's just, it's not funny in any way, but the way he says it makes me laugh every time. Then he takes the 2 steps, the lightning strikes, and he's like, all right, go ahead. Go ahead. That was an Erika moment right there.
Yeah.
Just, that scene is gold, right? That is pure comedy gold. And some of the bits with the terror dogs, some of the creatures are great. But again, most of the creatures were done with puppets and Pepper's ghost effects, even on camera. It was all classic, film tricks and stuff. I was, so pleased that that movie just did as well as it did. Because as a kid, man, I was, early teens. Man, that movie hit me right in the face, and it was perfect.
It
I must have
was.
went and saw that movie at least a dozen times, and I dragged friends who would come visit from out of state to the theater that was played it for like 11 weeks, 12 weeks, which you imagine a movie running that long now. Of course, we had video was still a thing, but it was just kind of a thing then. So we were still not used to that. We went to see the movies over and over again because that was what we had to do.
Well, and I think one of the things about this movie too that I feel was really interesting is that even ahead of its time a little bit, the female character is a very, very strong character. She's not really a damsel in distress. Like she becomes a situation, but I almost feel like Rick Moranis's character was the damsel in distress in this. Like,
Oh yeah,
he is
yeah,
such,
totally.
oh my God, such an idiot, right? The
Oh,
entire time.
yeah, but Vince Clortho, is one of the greatest historical names of all time, right?
Yeah, and I think that one of the, if I recall, and I don't recall this exactly, so you might, they did not want to originally make Gozer who she was. I think they were trying to do something else with Gozer and then went to this model
Yeah.
who was not an actress at all,
No.
right?
Yeah. There was a budget thing there, but I don't know the whole story behind that, but I do recall that being a thing.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. So we have that one, and then we go into Ghostbusters 2, right?
Before 2, we have to talk about the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon show, because
Oh
that's
yeah.
next. And the reason it was called the real Ghostbusters is we go back to Filmation, right? The original company that had made that old 1975 TV show. They heard that the movie was going to make a cartoon show, and they're like, "Oh, hey, here's the deal, and you owe us because we sold you the name for a song, literally, because we wanted you to have the song and the theme song." And I believe they were looked at Ghost Chasers and Ghost Breakers were the 2 opposite titles. But they said, "We'll do your cartoon. We're Filmation. We make a lot of cartoons." And they went, "No, we're going to go with Dick Clark or Deke Productions for the real Ghostbusters cartoon because they're popular right now and they had done a lot of TV shows at the time." And so Filmation said, "Fine, well, we're doing our own Ghostbusters cartoon and we're using our name. You're going to have to do something else." So that's when they made their name the real Ghostbusters, because even Filmation knew, hey, some kids are just going to turn on, look and see television guides as Ghostbusters, and they're going to turn us on. They're not going to care it's 2 guys and a monkey instead of the guys from the movie. And the TV show was what sold it for me. I mean, this was an incredible animated series. I don't know if you know some of the writers of this show.
No.
It was more like the movie originally, right? They originally was basically a sequel to the movie. And within minutes, though, their suits are so charged from paranormal activity that they take their suits off and put on these different colored uniforms. So that way they could sell different toys,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Uh,
No, makes sense.
but their original suits become possessed and become these ghost versions of themselves that they have to bust. And that was in the pilot. Now, what's fun is they changed the characters a little bit. I mean, Egon, I don't know what happened to Egon, but Egon's got, he's like blonde and tall and lanky. But it had a great voice cast, right? The guy who voices Ray and Slimer, who becomes a pet of the team, is Frank Welker, who we know as Scooby Doo and many other famous characters, and Megatron, right?
Oh, Megatron.
There's a girl named Laura Summer. She voices Janine, and she makes her perfect, right? Snarky, snotty, and just it was just one of the best versions of it. And then originally, Ernie Hudson auditioned to be Winston, and he didn't get it. He loses the part to this comedian named Arsenio Hall. I mean, I get it, but
I think that's funny because there's actually this whole thing where Dolly Parton went and did a drag show of her, Dolly Parton impersonators and lost.
Came in second, right?
Yeah, to another, it's kind of funny when somebody's being you. I can't wait for this, Mark. That's like our ultimate, we've hit the famous spot.
Yes.
People are impersonating us and they do a better job than we do at being ourselves.
Yeah. So Egon was voiced by Maurice LaMarche, who is probably one of the greatest voice actors of all time. I love him, mostly famous for being Brain from Pinky and the Brain.
What are we gonna do today, Pinky?
Yeah. And he was also Morbo on Futurama, who's one of my favorite characters. When I met him once, he joked that he has OCD, which is Orson Compulsion Disorder, where he just has to impersonate Orson Welles occasionally. That's the stuff. And then, of course, the lead character is Lorenzo Music playing Vinkman, who had voiced Garfield famously on the cartoon show. And then, sure enough, what happens? Bill Murray goes on to voice Garfield in the movies later.
Kismet.
Some of the things that go on in this series are crazy. Like as the show goes on, it becomes super popular. They've got the theme song, they've got the characters, they've got amazing writers. One guy named J. Michael Straczynski, who you might know wrote Babylon 5 a little while later and all this. They're throwing in Lovecraft references. They're throwing in every horror and crazy reference they can. At one point, they go to Arkham, Massachusetts, and one of the episodes is called The Call of Cthulhu. And this is a kid's show. And it's actually where they come up with the fighting cephalopods, Miskatonic University's team. But one of the big things was Janine, right? Janine's got the snarky glasses. She even has pointy glasses, right? That's a big thing. And that becomes, whether, again, this is kids' television back in the day. They're selling toys. They suddenly decide, all right, her glasses are too scary. Her personality is too scary. So we've got to tone her down and we need to focus on Slimer more and less of the guys. So the show becomes Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters. They change her glasses to round. They make her less snarky and they start changing all the characters around a little bit. And by season 3, it's a completely different show. And it was, the head of ABC was like, it's warmer, it's more for children. And that's the way it should be. And that was one of J. Michael Straczynski's comments was, is it knock off all the corners. And we had to change, make her more feminine and more maternal, like every other female on television. That was actually their note. So he was not happy. And that's what happened. So and then so they started swapping out voice actors. They changed a bunch of things, and and of course the show kind of died very quickly. So then we were given Ghostbusters 2.
Yes. So okay, Ghostbusters 2. Whenever they do a second movie, you always have to brace for impact because there were a lot of second movies that were sometimes better than the first.
Empire Strikes Back.
There were a lot of aliens. Don't get me started. But then there were other movies where they just completely tanked it. So you're kind of going, what are they going to do with this, right? They already saved New York City. I have to say, I think number 2 might be one of my favorites because of Sigourney Weaver's boss with the accent that he came up with.
The underrated Peter McNichol.
Yes.
Janos.
Oh my God. If you could not pick a more perfect hysterical character. I remember him talking about this accent he came up with because it's not an accent. And he says in the movie that he's from Queens. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And he has this accent, but I
That
thought
became like a running gag in movies in the 80s where they would give the foreign character a crazy accent and you would try to guess where the accent was from. And I remember that was the one character in Short Circuit where they gave his Hindi sidekick a strange accent. And of course, his comment was, where are you from? I was from Bakersfield. You know, that was just a running gag in the 80s. Not it has not aged well. So, gang,
no, but
we were fools. We didn't know.
yeah, but I have to say, I don't think he was trying to do this foreign thing, right? Like he was just crazy. And the way they did that, because the idea of this thing being in this painting could have been really, really stupid, right? The overall premise of this movie could have been really, really dumb. But because of his humor on it, right? And because of the way the other characters got to play off of him, it made it hysterical. And then, of course, entering in that there is a little baby and stuff like that is, Oscar is brilliant. And then they bring the Statue of Liberty to life.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be in the room when the script is pushed in and they go, this is what we're going to do. So there's going to be a ghost in a painting who's a god who's going to try to inhabit a baby.
He's somewhere between a god and Vlad the Impaler, right?
Yeah. And then Beau. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring the Statue of Liberty to life. And we're going to save the day in New York City with the Statue of Liberty. But that came with one of the best lines because back then was before all the cleanup really happened of New York, right? There's been massive cleanup over the years to make it less grungy and stuff like that. And, Bill Murray, he makes the joke about how are we going to get all these, because they make the toaster happy and it's popping. And it's like, how are we going to get that much positive energy out of the citizens of New York? Because they're cranky and pissed off and blah, blah, blah. And of course, then Ray comes through with, I know what will work.
Yeah. You need a symbol. You need the biggest symbol in the world. There's actually a cut scene from that movie where they actually take the Statue of Liberty back to the island. So, and then they have the big congratulations Ghostbusters from the mayor at Liberty Island. So that's one of the deleted scenes on one of the Blu-rays, I believe, or one of the DVDs. I remember seeing it back in the day. But so it's not as critically well received. It does well, but not as well as the first one. And that's why it disappears for a while. We do get a sequel to the animated series in 1997 called Extreme Ghostbusters. I think does not get nearly enough love, where Egon forms the next generation of Ghostbusters. I guess they originally were going to call it Super Ghostbusters because that was a big thing in the 90s was super this and super this. And then Extreme because as producer Beau Lake just said, everything in the 90s was extreme, right?
Yeah.
And it was supposed to kind of tie up loose ends, create this next generation. And it had some scary things in it, but it did not quite have the charm of the original. And it only did one season. They did bring the characters back for a comic book a few years ago, which was kind of cool. But yeah, it was kind of a could be a good sequel, but never really was. So I don't think it gets enough love because it actually had some good stories to it. But anyway, with that, gang, before we get into the more modern era of Ghostbusters, I think we should take a quick break. The sweltering heat of the Florida sun breaks as a chill runs down your spine. A dark shadow looms from a nearby tourist trap. You didn't expect to find this kind of shade in Florida. If only there was some sort of travel guide to steer you through the spookier locales. Well, you're in luck, reader. Join author Mark Muncy and Carrie Schultz as they lead you through the darkest locations in the Sunshine State in creepy Florida. Available from History Press and at fine bookstores everywhere.
Destiny Beard, the lyrical soprano who will haunt your dreams. With her alluring melodies and intricate harmonies, this dark siren of wistful song shall capture your soul and lead you into the night. Check out Destiny's new single, The Haunting Is Over, with international musicians Sam Haines and Gary Bennett, as well as her other musical works at destinybeard.com.
And we're back.
We're back. We're back.
All right. And everybody's listening to this episode going, are they just going over Ghostbusters history? Yes. Yes, we're going over Ghostbusters history and kind of reviewing movies as we go. But
I think a lot of people, one of the things that they should realize is that some of this stuff is what really started getting us into paranormal.
Oh, exactly. That's why we have to talk about this.
Back in 1984, there was like Time Life Books had a series out about ghosts, and I think there were a few things, but they're really, I mean, it was like Poltergeist, the movie. Everything was like this terrifying ghost experience, right? That people had. They were haunted, and The Exorcist, and all this stuff, and that's not what this was.
No, this was a whole new ball game. And what was fun with it at the time was, I think you're right about those Time Life books. I remember they were always like, you'd pay $1 for the first one, and then you'd have to pay $50 a month for the rest of your life to get the rest of the series. And the Ghost book wasn't till like book 14. So you were like, I gotta suffer through all these other things that are kind of cool, but I want the Ghost book. And man, those things were great. I did a fake commercial for one, a parody commercial for one. One of my first voiceover gigs was one that was totally unexplained events of no consequence. And it was like a man boards a plane at Kennedy Airport. At the same time, hundreds of miles away, his twin brother planes aboard in his workshop. It was just odd little thing like that. It was just, and it was like, man, that was the kind of stuff we were reading back then, just because we were so excited for something, anything.
Yeah.
So now, Ghostbusters 2 comes out, does not do as well as they had hoped. And so it disappears a little bit. And to be fair, they rightfully so. The main gang were like, you know what, let's take a break. We got that Extreme Ghostbusters 97. And then 2009. This is something a lot of people don't know unless you were big into video games like I was. Now, there'd been a couple Ghostbusters video games. There'd been the classic for the Atari computer and the Commodore 64 that I used to play that had the big overhead map screen, and you would drive your car along and vacuum up ghosts. It was pretty fun. You could upgrade your car. That was kind of neat. But 2009, Terminal Reality, which had done a couple really cool video game series. They did the Blair Witch games. They did the Nocturne series, which is a really cool horror game. We're gonna have to talk horror video games at some. I'm gonna reach out to Elizabeth Cadelli. She's my retro game enthusiast, and let's get them on at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll make a clickety clack there,
Clickety
Beau.
clack on a future episode. I will reach out to them and get them set up. If you haven't watched them, they're called Norman Bates Jr. on Twitch, and they are a lot of fun. But the Ghostbusters video game comes out, and it's for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 and PC. And they got all the original actors back. So Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, even Harold Ramis before he passed away, and Ernie Hudson. And you play as the rookie. It's literally Ghostbusters 3, in my opinion, because it tells the story. Ivo Shandor's back. There's a lot of deep lore in it. They tie in some of the TV show from the old real Ghostbusters. It's really fun. Some of the jokes in it are great. They don't give you a name because they keep talking about all the previous interns. We can't talk about what happened to them. And they give you all the experimental equipment because they don't want to know what's going to happen. Yeah, Bill Murray's line in that is just the no names after what happened last time. I don't want to get attached. Yeah, it's just so good. And the game is amazing, and it's everything you want. The gameplay was a little repetitive, but it still holds up. They remastered it a few years ago. Pick it up. It's worth your time. Even if you're not a big video game player, get somebody else to play through the tough parts and just watch for the story because it's great. They go back to the hotel where Slimer's from. They do a lot of callbacks and everything. It's the Ghostbusters sequel you never knew existed, but you really should watch.
I love that.
Nothing else, watch a playthrough.
Well, I'll have to do that. I do that with Jonathan all the time, as we know. I let him watch. They play games for me, and then I watch. So now
we got the controversy. 2016.
Here's what I'm going to say, because I know a lot of people have opinions. So this is the female Ghostbusters movie, right?
I don't even, I mean, I know that's what a lot of people referred to it as. I mean, it was just called Ghostbusters. They pretended like the original never happened. It was an alternate universe, but then they had to change that quickly to Ghostbusters Answer the Call when they re-released it because they were having issues because people were trying to get Ghostbusters and they were trying to get the original and they were getting this other one. And it's one of those, it stung because it stung so bad review wise and from the audience that it damaged the brand.
It did. And here's what I want to say about it though, right? First of all, I thought the cast was amazing and fun. Again, they did a bunch of Saturday Night Live alums. Kate McKinnon can like literally do no wrong.
Agreed.
Love her. Leslie Jordan, Chris Hemsworth with
doing the goofy part that he was given was
with
fine.
And in the fish tank, like there was
there's bits. There are good bits. It's the problem was it had no script. They were literally improvising almost every scene. And
I think that, and the fact was that I don't think it works when you try to redo something as if the other never happened.
Right.
Like if they had been descendants, kind of like what they did with what we're going to talk about right after this, if they had been descendants, daughters, nieces, whatever, tie them in there, picking up the mantle, it's good. I do not understand quite why they decided to go, just kidding, let's start again.
Yeah. And also let's, when we do bring in the other guys for cameos, let's put them in stupid cameos and make fun of them. You can't, you're going to tarnish the legacy of a beloved franchise. And
absolutely.
It could have been something. And there are moments of really good. And like I said, there's a couple characters that stand out that are amazing. I'm sad that it got what it got. And, but then if you're going to make it so that the other never happened and all that, why have Slimer? Why have all these other character throwbacks that are not throwbacks because that never happened?
Yeah.
So, it was a Melissa McCarthy vehicle. And sadly, at that point, she was already kind of sliding a little bit, on her laurels from doing some other fun stuff. So it was, sorry,
again,
gang.
I think that it would have been fantastic if it was not done in a way where they didn't pay attention to what had been done previously.
Right. And there was actually supposed to be a new animated series at this time called Ecto-Force. And then it never came out because the movie did so terribly, which is a shame.
True. And one of the things I think is interesting is that there are a lot of shows and stuff that kind of spawned off the idea of teams or people hunting paranormal things. Like if you really even want to draw an analogy to things like Supernatural and stuff like that. Like I love the whole premise, but the idea, I feel like the original Ghostbusters opened the door for the idea of hunting paranormal things, right? Started making that popular. I look at what they did with the female Ghostbusters, and unfortunately for me, it makes me a little mad because there was some funny stuff in it. I thought, the way they did it played on the original formula because you've got an entire cast of amazing comedic actors. So this is not like they cast the movie terribly or whatever.
No, again, I just think you got to focus on story and character. And
you have to tie, we're all fans. It's kind of like You can't have a movie that goes out of circulation for a number of years because, there's a great documentary. At some point we'll talk Star Wars, but there's a great documentary called The People versus George Lucas.
Yeah.
And it talks about how the fans of the original series, as oldies but goodies, reacted when the next Star Wars movies came out, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was because we've had 25 years or whatever to build up our love and our imagining and what we believe these characters are. So it wasn't the back to back to back where we could accept what was happening. We had already decided the lore and created more lore and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's similar with Ghostbusters. Like, I walked into it thinking that Kristen's character was going to be a descendant of one of the Ghostbusters.
Of Egon, or something, a Spengler. And which is what they designed her after and everything, but no, they went.
And then when they had some of the characters, like Bill Murray and stuff, come in and play these dumb things, you're just like, what a waste.
Ernie Hudson shows up as her uncle, and it's like, oh yeah, but no, he just owns a funeral home. What?
It was not done well. I do not love that.
No, and the jokes were already dated when they did it. I mean, they even do you get a card, you get a card, you get a card. That thing was like 10 years old when the movie came out. And it's like that. You can't. Not everything needs to be in the movie. You could. And there was a wonton soup joke that they did like 4 times in the movie. I'm like, why? It was very poorly done. There's enough people ripped it apart. I'm not going to continue to harp on that, but yeah, it was not good. And so rightfully so, it is regulated to the Ghostbusters we don't talk about. It doesn't matter that it was girls. I think it was a bad movie.
No, I agree with you.
Not in a good way. I like bad movies sometimes, but not this one. So it takes them 5 more years to reboot. They had already talked at that point. They were talking like Netflix was going to get a Ghostbusters animated series. They were talking about another couple, maybe possible live action series coming out and all that. And of course, all that got tanked because how badly that did. But then 2021 comes around and Ghostbusters Afterlife comes out.
Yeah.
Which I had issues with. I didn't love it like everybody else did. I thought it was great, but not the second coming. I still love that video game. I thought that video game was where they should have went, and my problem with Afterlife was, again, I think the plot left a little something and the characters didn't have a lot of room to grow except for the 2 things that saved the movie, and that's McKenna Grace's character, Egon's granddaughter. And I thought that was great. And then they brought back a lot of the iconic stuff and treated it properly.
True. I will say this though, okay? They had to come in and recover from the other movie, the movies that shall not be named, right? And then, when you're trying to do the introduction, I kind of get it. And I think at the time too, when they went to do it, because who knows what's going to happen because of how bad the last one did. They did this differently, but it could have ended very, very badly. And I like that they took it a little bit out of New York City and they gave a backstory to what was happening. Now I see why they almost did what they did to give some closure to the older characters.
Yeah.
If they needed to, if this was going to be the end of it, right?
Right.
And it wasn't going to be received well. I think that's part of how they did it. And I have to say, for me, it's Egon, right? Like that's a hole in this movie franchise that we lost the actor.
Sadly,
right?
Harold Ramis passed away, and we couldn't get it. You can't bring that back. And he was one of the original writers.
Yes.
That gave it heart and all that. So
but
the fact that they basically had to invent heart for the new movie was it's well done. I'm not dissing it at all.
It's his son though.
Yeah,
brought this back.
Well, Reitman's
son brought this back. And I feel like when I watched a behind the scenes for that particular movie at one point, and one of the things that I loved that they talked about was he really wanted to pay homage to the original cast, the original thought. And then of course Paul Rudd, oh my God, Paul Rudd can do no wrong to me. Like it's impossible for Paul Rudd to do anything wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I think he did just fine in that, and as the scientist who, you know, was a fan. I like that he was a fanboy and all that. When the originals show up in Afterlife, that was my one complaint was, again, they show up kind of at the end, just kind of show up and help save the day, which is fine. But again, there was no build up to that. I thought there should have been a little more build up to that. So it was nice picking the box. They're here and they saved the day. So
yeah, and they help, and of course the characters. But I like that the torch was passed.
yes,
that is what I like. I thought that was done very, very well, and very well explained as to how the torch was passed, right?
yes,
And
yeah, no, and it's a fantastic movie, well worth the time and effort. A solid effort.
and then we get to last night, Mark.
Yeah.
So last night, me and you, cinema, we started this episode, we're circling back.
Yeah.
We went to see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yes, and we used our Waze apps that had their special directions given to us by Ray Stantz of the Ghostbusters. Dan Aykroyd gives you driving directions on your Waze for Frozen Empire Day, which was hysterical.
It was very funny, I have to say. But me and you, so part of this, we got a picture, we got a little video of us. We're going to share, of course.
It's already on a couple of the social medias. It'll be on. It's on. It should have staggered out to all of them eventually. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was fun watching kids watching this movie. Which when I realized looking down, I was like, there was me, 30 years ago, watching these movies, and here they are, kids watching it today.
We're not going to give any spoilers, but I will say, so they're back in New York City. That's very evident in the first scene of the movie.
Yeah, right off the bat, it's the car chase with the old Ecto-1.
And they're chasing, I think it's a
sewer dragon. Chinese sewer dragon. Hell's Kitchen Chinese sewer dragon. So
Chinese sewer dragon. And
that's from the animated series. That's right from real Ghostbusters. No, they never did anything like that in the movie. So this was much all right. They've opened the world. They've brought back to that. So
yes, and there's in that first scene, again, no spoilers here. They drive past this massive ghost dragon. Of course, going through New York City. They're chasing it, and there's a scene where they pass a cop car who's eating donuts, atypical, and they go, "Should we call this in?" And the other guy goes, "No, they got it."
Yeah, that was very much a Erika. Nope, let the professionals handle this.
I'm good. You can let them taste that dragon. I'm fine. But I have to say, it's got a cast that I really loved. They brought back the OG original Ghostbusters that are still with us. Sigourney Weaver was not in this one, and neither was Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, no.
But he stepped away from acting. So
yeah, he became a dad. That's why he dropped out.
Yes, but I think they did such a fun job with what they're doing with it and how that universe is expanding.
Yeah, I thought it was well done. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I had problems with it. There were bits that it dragged, and I'm like, I should not be worried about looking, going, this is a little boring in a Ghostbusters movie. But there was just a couple bits. The cameos were fine. I thought they all did really fun. They again expanded the lore, expanded the world, so it opens it up so that they could do a lot more crazy things. I liked that. I loved our lead character was McKenna Grace's character again, and they gave her kind of a cool buddy story with a ghost girl. And again, no spoilers, but it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, and I thought they had really good growth for the entire family as to where they are now.
The issues are that there's so many characters that a lot of them aren't given a lot of room to grow or do much of anything. The poor mom character, whose name I don't even know, just the mom, because that's all she's done in the last two movies. She's been the mom, and in this she has a couple moments of fun, but she's still just the mom. Again, when you're upstaged by your entire cast, it's kind of sad, but that's kind of what happens.
I feel like they opened the door though for now sequels to have the cast and have room to grow instead of going, we're going to do all these characters and explain all of this stuff. And, I don't know. I didn't see the same plot stuff that you did. I thought that they did a really good job and they built up because to me, this was more a character story than even an action story. Like it's more of about, because they've been ghost busting, but we'll say this, my favorite person who kind of shows up in this one is Patton Oswalt. I'm not going to say what he does, but oh my God, my heart soars for that man.
He has a great part. He plays, Mr. Exposition and has a fun part in it and doing what he's supposed to do. Again, the main character Phoebe is great. I guess the problem is the mom's name is Callie, so that's why I kind of tune it out.
Whoa, that's so bad the way you just said that.
No, I can't imagine Callie as a mom right yet. So it's one of those things. Callie's a pet mom, not a Ghostbuster mom. But anyway, sorry, Callie. Just had to bring that up. But no, I think Slimer is a lot of fun. And they brought Slimer back properly without making it all Slimer and all this. Yeah. And I feel like this one just kind of the big battle at the end. There were a couple things I thought I remember watching a couple things in the past where if I could change one line, it would make that movie so much better. If I could change just one thing, it would make that movie so much better. But again, I'm not a director. I'm not a movie writer. I've written a couple screenplays, and sadly, they've only been produced by Mexican production companies. So I have no idea how they came out. I've never seen them. So I can't really say that. But there were a couple bits of this where I'm like, ooh, they set this up earlier. And then it just kind of disappears and there's no payoff. I'm like, we spent 5 minutes setting that up. Why was there no payoff? You could have cut that 5 minutes. So that was some of the things I was feeling at the end. But other than that, I'd say, solid 3.5 out of 5. I loved it. And I think you'll all enjoy it too. Especially if you're into lore and folklore. Because that was one of the lines in it from Patton Oswalt's character, which was where Dan Aykroyd leads down to him, "Are you a believer?" He's like, "I'm a folklorist working at the New York Library in the basement. Of course I'm a believer."
So true. So true.
That hit me a little bit in the feels there. So yeah. Yeah, but those are things I could talk about. We'll discuss that on the Discord at some point. Yeah, for patrons. You can
for Patreons.
I got it there, Beau. Patrons. So I love it. Carrie Coon is a national treasure. And anybody who says otherwise needs to be destroyed. Her as Phoebe Spengler is perfect.
I agree. So I think I give it 2 thumbs up. That's my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely a thumbs up for me. So
yeah,
the second thumb's kind of bent, but it's up.
Agreed. Well,
all right. Well,
so travelers, here's our travels of the day. First of all, I have gone to New York City and seen the Ghostbusters firehouse because the Ghostbusters firehouse still exists. It's really cute. You can go see it, which is tons of fun. And then you can have a really good time with some good restaurants and stuff if you're anywhere near New York City.
You can go to the New York Public Library.
Yeah, New York Public Library with the lions out front, which for this movie is the only reason kids go to the library.
One of my favorite things ever was there was an old comedy troupe called Improv Everywhere, and they would just show up in places and do random skits and stuff. They were the start of the flash mob thing, and at one point they had a bunch of people go into the New York Public Library wearing sheets and just walking around the library flipping through books, and the librarians would come up to him and say, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm haunting the library." And they got permission to do this. And then a bunch of the Improv Everywhere guys come in as the Ghostbusters and chase them out of the library just randomly. So one of those great bits in history. So if you do go to the public library, maybe throw on a sheet and walk in and see what happens.
Okay, let's not get in trouble for that. And the other one is go to the movie. Go see this Ghostbuster movie. Catch up on the other ones first. We got these really fun, and they're in the photo that we'll be sharing with this episode. We got some really fun Ghostbuster cups with Slimer on the top. We got a really cool tin. We've seen that lots of different theaters. So I'm just throwing this out there. If anyone gets one of the Ghost Trap popcorn boxes, you could send it our way. We wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, our theater had the one that looks like the firehouse. It's still
Which we
pretty
both
cool.
got, but it's not the same as the Ghost Trap. So if you have that
And the
out there,
Slimer, I've
travelers,
seen the Slimer one too. That was a bunch of the guys up at Gary Con, which was this weekend, which was the big 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons convention. They all went and saw Ghostbusters and then played the Ghostbusters role-playing game afterwards, which is a lot of fun from West End Games. Sadly, no
yes.
longer with us, but that game was a lot of fun. Ghostbusters International. And they all put their dice in their Slimer popcorn bucket. So it's like him bubbling out dice, which was great. So
Awesome. So definitely check all this out, travelers. And Mark, what do you got to say for yourself?
well, gang, thank you again for listening. Thanks for sharing, and subscribing, doing all the things. Please join our Patreon and become a patron and do our watch along. We're doing our first movie club. We just did, and then we are going to be doing future stuff. We've got our book club going this month. We're reading The Great Crota by our good friend Al Goingback. If you want to join in the discussion, that's on our Discord, and doing that, it's $1. Come on, help yourself, and it helps us. And then also, we are getting ready for Encounter Quest in just a week or so. I'll be there. Erika sadly won't be, but I'll be there, and I'll have stuff for us to sign for you. And that's in Hamlet, North Carolina. And make your plans now for the 14th. And with that, I will just say we have made this long journey from 1984 all the way up to today. We've had many years of ghost busting. We have kicked ass and taken names, and we are on our way to investigate more of the paranormal. We will study it as always, and we will see you on the other side.